So, start from the beginning. Where were you born?
I'm
In the hospital or at home?
at home.
Who delivered you?
I have the slightest idea who the doctor was.
Was it a doctor or a midwife? It was a doctor, not a midwife.
I don't know. I know
He doesn't remember.
my mother wasn't married, and she never talked to me about my birth. Anything that I found out from my aunt in later years.
How old was Graham when you were born?
She wasn't quite 16. She would have been 16 in June, and I was born in February.
When did they get married?
2 years after I was born.
Did they have any other kids before they were married? Just you. When did you find out?
My Didn't Aunt Evelyn tell me?
Mm-hmm.
My aunt told him. Got talking one day, and
How old were you?
Were you in college?
it was after that. I think
Wow.
we were married a while. I just never. And then Aunt Doris, mother's youngest sister, told me one day. She said, just out of clear blue, she said, "Oh, I can remember when you were born." She said, "I was going to school that morning." She said, when I come home from school, they said, go upstairs and see what Mabel has. Said, "I know. I saw her head sticking out of the doctor's bag when he went in this morning when I was going to school." That's what she said.
So when you found out, what did you think?
Well, I had suspected, but I didn't. They'd never tell us when their anniversary was or anything like that.
After you found out, did they start telling you?
Never discussed it with me. It hasn't been too many years. Past the dip.
Now, when was Jean the next one born?
What?
Yeah.
Who was the next oldest? Jean?
Jean, 4 years later. We lived down in Ellerslie, Maryland, which is a little town right on the border of Pennsylvania and Maryland.
What did
When I
you?
was
When she was born?
on the pass me a napkin. She was born at home, and they took me up for a couple of days to my grandparents in Heinemann to stay. And
What are your grandparents' names?
Amelia and Irvin Burkett.
So, Mabel was a Burkett. Do you know when Mabel was born?
What?
Do you know when your mom was born? What year?
Yeah, 1915.
And when were her parents born? When were her parents born? 18 something.
I don't know. My great-grandmother came over from Germany
Do you know where anybody else came
when
from?
she was 16. Brooke was her name.
Why did she come over here?
To get freedom, I guess.
So,
It came from Germany.
what year were you born?
1931.
17th of
18.
February 18th, 1931.
And when? How much later was Wayne born?
6 years later.
Is Wayne the baby?
I
What did-
remember he was born in Cumberland in the hospital.
He was the
Yeah.
only one born in the hospital then, huh?
And my aunt and uncle, Dad's brother, and his wife lived down there. And they took me down to live with them a week or so.
What did your dad and mom do for a living?
Dad worked at the Celanese Corporation in Cumberland. Everybody down there worked for them.
What is it?
Celanese, they made materials.
Oh. So what did he do? He just like cut materials, or do you know?
I don't know.
Did he
He was
finish?
probably in around the manufacturing
Yeah,
of it because he was there when they had that big explosion.
Did he finish high school? He didn't finish high school.
Uh-uh.
Did he
What grade?
finish?
What
We
grade
finished
was he in?
8th grade.
8th grade.
Yeah.
Did your
Because they didn't have school. You had to go to Heinemann to finish, and he had no transportation. His dad died when he was 7 or 8, and he had no transportation.
So his mom raised him by herself.
No, she married a couple years later.
How many siblings did Pap have?
Oh, 3 brothers and a sister.
Was he the oldest or the youngest?
No, he was a baby.
And
His sister was the oldest. He had,
now, Mabel. How did she have sisters and brothers?
let's see, there was Aunt Myrtle, Aunt Evelyn, and then one died with polio in between there. And then mother, and one boy, Uncle Bob, then Aunt Katie, Aunt Bernice, Aunt Tootie, 9 of them.
Wow.
Aunt Katie was half the reason I was named Katie. The other half was Mom's Aunt Katie, I think.
So
You have one of her rings, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
so you
She was very pretty. She was Miss Heinemann one year.
so you were born in Heinemann, then you moved to Cumberland.
Yeah, when I was about 2.
Did you grow up there?
No, we only lived there about a year, and we moved back to Ellerslie, right on the border of Bedford and Hyman.
Why did they move back? Because of job?
I don't think they liked the city as well.
And then did you grow up there?
No.
You were only there a year or 2 before you went back
Yeah.
to Heinemann.
And then you grew up mostly.
Mother was doing the laundry. Yeah, in a washing machine with a wringer. Everything. And had the rinse tub there. And she went out to hang up some clothes. And forgot to turn the wringer off. And there were some clothes in the rinse water. I thought I'd help. And I was 4. I started putting these diapers in through the wringer and got this arm caught. You can't tell all the
right there.
stuff's in it.
So what happened to it?
Well, it tore. It kind of stalled there and tore that. And then it started just as I screamed. And Jean was sitting in the high chair, and Mother thought maybe she fell out, and she came running. And just as she got there, it left loose and started on up. It would have broke my shoulder, but she came and hit the button, and it stopped. Well, they had to take me to Cumberland to the doctor, and every time it was healing from the outside in instead of the inside out. He'd tear it open, and Dad just couldn't stand me seeing me go through that pain. And he complained about it, and my grandfather said, bring her up to Heinemann. We have a new young doctor up here, and he's good. So they took me up in 2 weeks. Mother and Dad were taking care of it by themselves. It was healed.
Pass it.
He knew what to do.
So did you move up there then because of that?
And Dad said, we're going to move up here where there's a doctor handy, because it wasn't Ellerslie, it was a little tiny town. No doctors or anything. You had to go to Cumberland. So
And is that where you stayed?
I lived there till I went to college.
Do you know your address or your first house or your first street? Or that street there?
Clarence Street, we didn't have street numbers because we went to the post office to get our mail, but I lived on Clarence Street.
How many numbers did you have in your phone number?
Don't ask me, I don't even know.
Did you have a phone?
At about 5,
I
probably.
guess.
But did you have a phone with a party line, or
Party on.
do you remember making phone calls?
Not till I was older.
And then where did you go to high school?
Heinemann at high school.
So
Grade
you
school.
HHS. Class of what?
48. And we had to walk to school.
How far was it?
Well, let's see, 1, 2, about 3 blocks when I was little. And then when I got older, when we built our house up, what would you say,
Half mile.
half mile?
How far? Now, you said you were the top in your class. Did you study hard or were you smart?
I guess
3 in the
must have
class.
There were 3 in the class.
No. You had 30, didn't you? 20, you had 28 or 30, didn't you?
In your class? What were your favorite subjects?
I
Homemade?
liked them all.
Even the biology? And the geometry?
Algebra 1 and 2. But I didn't take Latin the first year it was given, because it was given the same period as the home ec class. And I took the home ec class because I was thinking of majoring in that when I went to college. And
Yep.
then I realized that I needed the Latin for college maybe. So then I took Latin.
Now, you finished high school, and your father said you always would go to college. Did you ever think that was weird, even though none of the other girls were going to go to college?
No. I was going to Juniata, which was a Brethren college, and I was Brethren, and
Did you guys go to church growing up?
what?
Did you go to church
Oh, yeah.
every Sunday?
All right.
Twice.
It was
Sunday morning, Sunday evening.
Wednesday evening Bible study and Sunday evening preaching, as well as Sunday morning. And another church up even beyond us, at the end of town, there was a campground. And they had 2-week services up there in the summertime. And I remember, we always went. And I remember this one. I don't know what grade I was in, maybe 7th or 8th. Maybe 7th. And the preacher was talking about, being saved. And you had to accept Christ, but I didn't want to go. I really felt the need, but I didn't want to do it in another church. I wanted, and we didn't have evangelistic meetings when they gave the altar call till fall. And I worried from August to October, what if something would happen to me? And I hadn't made that commitment, but I never told anybody. But I did. I remember it so well. I worried. And that night when he gave the altar call, I was the first one.
So what
up
did you
front.
say? What did you say when you went up front? Do you remember?
No, I didn't say anything.
But why was that so important to you?
Well, because I felt what I read in the Bible and heard preached, that you had to make a commitment to Christ to be saved.
And so that commitment included making an altar call.
Mhm.
Did you always believe in God
Yeah.
from day one?
We went to church from,
But I know a lot of people who go to church that don't believe in God.
well, I did. And
Yeah.
my parents did.
Your parents did. Your sister, brother?
I don't know.
But you did.
It was different.
Did you know? Did something happen that made you believe?
What?
Did something happen that made you believe, or you always believed?
No, I just listened to the preachers.
Did you
What they-
Did you pray? Do you remember what the first time you ever prayed?
No, I don't remember the first time, but I prayed.
Who taught you how to pray?
I was just in church and Sunday school.
And do you remember reading the scriptures for the first time?
Did you get Gideon Bibles at
We got-
Hyman?
We got Bibles when we joined church, yeah.
Did you mark in them, or did you no marking in them? Do you ever mark in your scriptures now?
No,
No marking.
I don't know why, but I do.
So you believed in God. You went to church every week, and you prayed. And then you went to college. So did you only have one choice of where to go to college?
Yep.
Why?
Dad said, Church of the Brethren, you go to Church of the Brethren College, and
Now, wasn't there a couple of Church of the Brethren colleges by that point?
not in our area.
Oh, okay.
Kids didn't go very far. Most of the kids that did go to college went to Frostburg Community College.
How much was your tuition? Do you remember?
Was it about $900 a year?
That's a lot for back then, actually.
But I worked in the dining hall. Mine only cost about half that much.
You how many hours a week did you work in the dining hall?
3 meals a day.
All the meals?
Once in a while we get a weekend free.
How did you do your schoolwork and work in the dining hall?
What?
How did you find time to do your schoolwork and work in the dining hall?
Well, you went, when classes left out for lunch, we served,
Serve tables.
and you went right to the dining hall and served, and we didn't wash the dishes, we just had to take them out and then reset the table.
Did you have about 2 or 3 tables you were in charge of? Each waitress?
2, I believe.
2.
So that's where you guys met, was college, right? Okay, so
Now
let's
let me tell you about that.
hold on. No, we're gonna get to that in a minute. We gotta start over with Pappy then. Okay, where were you born?
Salemville.
Where's that?
Haven't you been to Salemville?
I don't know.
Yeah, over where my home was.
Pennsylvania?
There at the farm.
You never been to the farm? I know I've been to the farm, but it's been a while.
Yeah.
Were you born in the house?
Yeah.
Now you're the baby of how many?
8, well 9. The first one died when he was about 9 months
What
old.
are your parents' names?
Luke. Daniel Luke Bowser. They called him D. Luke Bowser. He didn't like Daniel for some reason.
He went by D. Luke.
And your mother?
Pearl.
Now Pearl died, didn't she?
Yeah.
And was Pearl your mother?
Pearl's my mother. She lived till we were in seminary and she died.
She died in 54.
What did she die of?
She had her gallbladder out. The doctor, who
Messed
was
it
80
up.
some years old, cut too deep, cut into her stomach. When she'd eat, the food would come out the incision.
His dad didn't want that doctor to operate, and she said, "Oh, he's always been so good to me." So he gave in.
He was
And
good
we
to
found out from a nurse who had the guts to tell the family that he made a mistake.
So, you were the baby. Of how many? 9?
9.
9.
4 boys, well, 5 counting John, the first one,
Mhm.
and 4 girls.
What were their names? If you started the oldest.
John, the first one, and then Josephine was the oldest one that lived. Of course, she isn't living now. And Josephine, then Virgie, then Mary, three girls. Then it was Junior, D. Luke Jr., and then Leroy, Donnie, Donald, and Gertrude, and myself.
Were you named after anyone? They just like the name Harold?
My sister, when she was in 2nd grade, there was a little boy named Harold that died. And she always liked the name, and I think she liked the boy. But right about that time, there was a comedian on TV, Harold Lloyd. So it was kind of a popular name. And that's why they gave me Harold Lloyd.
What about you? Did they name you after anyone? That you know? And what did your
I told people I was named after my mother.
Oh.
She named in 1890 or something like that. I wasn't named until 1930.
Now, what did your parents do for a living?
Dad was a farmer, raised turkeys primarily.
And dairy.
Yeah,
How big a farm?
he was a progressive farmer. Really, we had 200, I think about 210 acres, and see.
So mostly poultry, and some dairy just for family farm aspect.
well, we had 21 milk cows. We shipped to Seal Test at Altoona, and one year we were the largest shipper shipping milk to them with 21 cows.
It's just when the Cove dairy industry was really getting underway. Didn't tell her about the turkeys.
10-gallon cans, we'd put them down in the water, ice water.
What did your great grandparents do,
I have no idea.
or your grandparents?
Grandpa and Grandma Bowser, they lived up in the mountain. Grandma cured.
What does that mean?
Well, if people would have a burn, she would go and say the words over them and blow on them to blow the burn away.
What?
Yeah.
She was
Or if somebody would have a cut, she knew which scripture to quote to stop the bleeding.
They did a lot of that back then.
Oh.
My great
And she
grandmother
knew
did.
teas, what kind of tea to use for back pains and all that.
So your grandmother was a curer.
Yeah.
What did your grandfather do?
He was, I think Grandpap was kind of a jack of all trades. He could make shoes and stuff, things like that.
In the late 1800s.
Yeah.
They lived in the mountains of Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
Up above the farm.
and they just lived there and did their thing. Do you know how many children they had,
They had 4.
including your
Aunt,
father?
yeah. Aunt Ruth, Aunt Bertha, my dad, and and Uncle Paul.
And where did they come from?
They all were from over in Germany, on both sides.
So
My
they.
mother's side and my dad's
So
side.
who was the first generation of Bowsers? Your
Oh,
your
the
parents?
Bowsers came over back in the 1700s. There were about, I think, 9 or 10 Bowser brothers came over.
How did they spell their name?
Different ways. Bauser was one. And I think Bowser, of course. There might have been another one. But these brothers came over as indentured servants. And
They were to work to pay off their.
couple of them, when they got here, they skipped the country, went west. So going to conference, we ran into Bowser's, in California,
Mm-hmm.
and in Kansas.
So those were descendants of
Yeah.
the brothers who skipped out on their
Yeah.
indentured servitude.
Yeah.
So the 9 brothers, or whatever, who came over here, they came from Germany.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The Palatine area. Well, that would be near Switzerland, I guess.
So, one of the Bowser brothers that we descend from, did that person stay and finish
Mhm.
out?
Yeah.
Mhm, yeah.
Okay.
So when they came to the United States, where did they come to? Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
Were they brethren, or well, the brethren didn't really call themselves brethren.
I think most of, well, they all were Protestant,
Mhm.
but I don't think they came primarily because they were brethren, but they settled in areas where the brethren were located.
Now, your mother, who was a curer, was she Christian?
Grandmother, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And your father was a jack of all trades. Your grandfather was a
yeah,
jack of all trades.
yeah.
What about your maternal grandparents?
Lived down at Donnertown.
Poured out
Grandpap Cell died the year I was born. I really didn't know much about them.
So your grandfather, your
were-
mother name was Sell, C-E-L-L?
S-E-L-L.
Oh, S-E-L-L.
Mm-hmm.
Where did the cells come from? Germany?
I don't know. I don't know.
So your maternal grandparents, they lived in Pennsylvania?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What did they do?
I think yeah. Dad and Mother basically were third cousins.
Okay.
I tell people that's why
Yeah,
I
we look so much alike.
That's why I look so much like myself.
Yeah.
So your maternal grandparents came over to Pennsylvania. You don't really know what they did.
No.
They're probably just farmers,
Yeah.
merchants, something. And then where did your mother and father meet?
I think they met down at Newry. Dad worked in a store. I think that's the way it was. Mother taught school in Newry for a while.
Paige?
She taught, I think she went to 8th grade and then got what extra training she needed to be a one-room school teacher in a one-room schoolhouse.
And,
Yeah.
and she met your father in a store? Or
I
something?
think so. Yeah.
How old were they when they got married? Were they
I don't
young?
know. I could probably find that in the record someplace back there.
And so they immediately moved here to the Bedford area?
No, they, Dad farmed for other people and moved around different farms for a while, and then finally they settled out at Salemville.
How did they come up with the money to buy 200 acres?
The McLean Wyant owned the farm. He owed taxes on it, and I think Dad and Mother bought it, borrowed money to buy it by paying taxes. Because I heard that when they settled at the courthouse, Mrs. Wyant began crying and said, "Look, we had that farm, now we don't have anything." And I believe Mother told Dad we need to increase the price of the farm so they can get $1,000.
So were your parents brethren?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Your
In
grandparents?
fact, Mother's side, Grandpap Sill was a deacon, and all of his brothers were ministers down at Lamersville in the Church of the Brethren. And you go around, the windows all have names of my great uncles. James A. Sill was 104 when he died.
Wow.
When we were in Burkittsville, they were having what anniversary?
75th.
75th anniversary. And they were saying who the men were there who dedicated the church. And when they named them off, one was James A. Sell. And Harold said, "That's my uncle." And I couldn't believe it. Harold was the pastor now, but his uncle, all those years ago, was there to dedicate
That's
the building.
When he was 100 years old,
Who is this again?
James A. Sell.
Which is your uncle.
great uncle.
Great
yeah.
uncle.
Mhm.
So your mother's, your
mother.
grandmother's sister, brother?
Yeah, it would have
Yeah.
been mother's uncle.
Okay.
But he came out and stayed at our place for about a week. I was, I guess, 6 or 7 at the time. And he had me, I wanted to read some funnies, and he said, "Do you ever read from the Bible?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Read a chapter to me." So I got the Bible out and read one of the Psalms. I wish I knew which one it was, but I read it to him. He was blind. I read it to him about 3 or 4 times, and he had it memorized at
Wow.
100 years of age.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That is good.
So your family, both, especially on your mother's side, were all brethren way
Yeah.
back.
Mhm.
So they were all believers.
Yeah.
And your parents, they were believers.
Yeah.
They went to church.
Yeah.
Did you go to church
Oh yeah.
every week?
I can't remember when I didn't go to church. You know, from little up.
Do you remember when you decided that you believed it?
Tobias Henry was the evangelist, and I was 9. And every night they'd give an altar call. At that time, you indicated you wanted to give your life to Christ by going forward during an altar call. And I wanted to go up, and I walked back to my dad and mother and said, "Dare I go up?" And they said yes, and then I went up.
So that was when, so he had come to town, and so that was the same thing that you did. You went up. Now, did you read the scriptures before then?
The Gideon Society, now I would have been, let's see, 9. But the Gideon Society, I don't know if they still do it, but they would come around and give little testaments to all
yeah,
the
they,
kids.
they do that on
Yeah.
campus.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
Little green Bibles.
and I had a testament every night. I'd read a chapter. In fact, I think I had the entire Bible because Genesis was hard for me to understand.
So you read.
I'd read when I'd go to sleep, and Mother would come back and turn the light off. I'd
You'd
fall
fall
asleep. Yeah.
Do you remember who taught you to pray?
I think it was just a natural. Mother always had the grace at the meals.
Really, not your
Yeah.
dad.
No.
That's normally it's the dad,
Yeah.
right?
And she had the same prayer, a very beautiful prayer, and I wish I knew it. It was a very beautiful prayer. And I asked Luke and Virgie and Mary. Josephine knew it,
But
and Beverly might
have
have
it.
it, so I'd like to get a just a
So
very
and she
beautiful
said
prayer.
the prayer. Did you
Mhm.
pray over all the meals?
Yeah.
What about you? Did you guys pray at your meals?
Yeah.
When you went to bed, or
Mhm.
not when you went to bed?
Yeah, we every meal we would have prayer.
And you always went to church.
Mhm.
Now, where did you go to high school?
New Enterprise, Rip Local.
Where's
Good
that?
old JLRHS. J. Leonard Rip Local
Mhm.
was a steel man. He had a patent for a certain type of steel that the government used, and he was wealthy. And during the Depression, he came back to New Enterprise, his birthplace, and gave money to build a school. I think the community had to match it a little bit, but
So you graduated from there in what
Mhm.
year?
48.
And you graduated in.
48.
So you're both. So when were you? What was your birthday?
March 21,
In 1930.
30.
You're 30.
31.
Mhm.
February 18.
So you were a little bit older in your same grade then.
You didn't ask about my father.
Oh yeah.
My father was born in West Virginia. And when he was 5, I don't know the reason, but my grandfather decided that it was better to live up in Pennsylvania.
and then.
And I didn't know this until, what was I doing? And this lady said to me years ago, how did you get, how did you get up to Pennsylvania? And I said, I don't know how they did. So I asked Dad, and he said his sister was the oldest and he was the youngest. So he and my grandmother and my sister came up by train to where they bought the farm down below Heinemann. And his dad and the other 3 boys drove the cattle and wagons and all the supplies up from Moorfield, West Virginia.
Was your father's parents from West Virginia?
Yeah,
What part? Moorfield?
Moorfield.
How far do they go back in Moorfield? The Hires.
I don't know. Pretty far.
And your mother, where did she come from?
She always lived in Heinemann.
How did they meet?
I don't know. I don't know.
Never heard them say.
So you graduated in
48.
48,
Mm-hmm.
and did you always know you wanted to go to college?
In 8th grade, we used to have an 8th grade examination that
To go
you
to high
had to
school.
pass to go to high school. And one of the questions was, what do you want to be when you graduate from high school? And I wrote on that I wanted to be a minister.
You knew in 8th grade.
Uh-huh.
So why?
I just felt ought to be one. I don't know if you call that a call or what, but
What was it that appealed to you about the ministry?
I think one of the things, some ministers that we had, I admired them.
Mm-hmm.
I think that had something to do with it.
Did any of your other siblings want to do ministry?
Yeah, Luke was in the ministry,
Okay.
my older brother.
Did he decide to do that before you decided?
Yeah,
So that was, and your mother's side, of course.
Yeah.
That was a thing that your
Yeah.
family did. So you were in 8th grade?
and I didn't do it because of mother's family or anything, or even, I don't think because of Luke, but it's just something I felt I ought to do.
So even in the 8th grade, so what, did you do anything different with your life because you knew that that's what you wanted to do? Did it change how you lived?
Oh, I still was ornery.
Like how?
Oh, in school, I'd cut up.
Were you loud or were you a teaser?
Oh, I wasn't loud. I was more of a jokester, I guess.
What were you like in your school
Well,
age?
everybody knew I was the smart one in school.
Did they tease you for being the smart
Yeah.
one? How did you feel about
And
that?
some, I just left to go in one, because my close friends didn't matter to them. And they were all, decent students and went to church. Not all of them went to my church, but, we had a group of girls that,
What did you do for fun?
as I say, in the winter, we went sled riding, we went ice skating, nice weather, we rode our bicycles. Heinemann was a big baseball town. We always went to baseball games and ball games. And
Did you play any sports?
no, they didn't have any sports for girls. The only sport we had was baseball for boys. So,
And did you like to watch it, or you just?
oh yes, we had and they played big schools in Cumberland, and we'd go there, and we could beat them. And it was just a good thing.
What did you do? Did you work during high school?
Well, my dad had a grocery store, yes, and
What was the grocery store?
then
called?
later on,
What was the grocery store called?
Hires Market.
Hires Market. So did he started Hires Market.
Well, he bought it from a neighbor.
What types of things did they sell at Hires Market?
Everything.
Did you work at the counters or shop stocking?
I worked at the counter. I worked in the office. if it was when business would get quiet certain times of the day, he'd send me back to the office because I had a real good handwriting and I did his office work for him. And,
Did you like working in the shop?
yeah. And then
How
later,
big? How big was it? Can you describe the
well,
the
it was for Heinemann. It was the biggest one. I
like
mean,
the size of this house?
oh, I don't have any idea. But it, you know, it was one of the main was the main market in Heinemann.
How did did it close when he opened the bakery or what?
No, he sold it to my girlfriend's brother, and because see, he had worked at Celanese, which is a clothing, all his life, and he decided he wanted to do more than that, and he'd take correspondence courses from up in
How about Erie?
Erie, Pennsylvania. He was always studying. And then when he decided to be a baker, he'd get off from work in Cumberland and maybe work the all night shift for nothing, just to learn
Why did he want to become a baker?
he wanted to better himself. He didn't want to work in manufacturing all his life.
So he sold the store and became a baker.
No, yeah,
He did. And what was the name of the store that he opened?
Harris Market.
And was that the one that was in some kind of famous place? The bakery?
No, that was Washington Bakery
What's
No.
the Washington Bakery?
in Bedford.
Well, then he went to work for, what was the bakery company?
Federal.
Federal Bake Shops. He became manager of a Federal Bake Shop, which was a bigger, you know,
Mm-hmm.
an
They had
outs.
federal bake shops in a lot of different cities.
And he ran the one in Cumberland. He ran the one in Altoona. And
That's when Procter and Gamble got after
Procter
him.
and Gamble, somehow he heard in Cincinnati that they were hiring specialists, and he took tests. They gave him credit for 2.5 years of college.
Wow.
And he traveled, he was like a troubleshooter. Any of their bakeries that had problems, he would be sent out to.
So how long did he work for Procter and Gamble? A long time or a little time?
No, he didn't work a long time. Mother didn't like it out there.
So your whole family moved to Cincinnati?
I was in college, but
Oh.
in January of my first year in college, they moved out there. But they only stayed about 2 years.
Came back.
And the bakery in Bedford came open. And
The Washington Bakery.
yeah, and he really would like to have his own. It was a real respected bakery, and Mother could move back, you know, here, and so he left Procter and Gamble. He was doing well, but he was gone a lot. I mean, they sent him all over the United States, and she was alone there in the city, and Mother was just a simple
Country girl.
person. She had to quit school in her sophomore year when she was pregnant, and so they moved back.
She wasn't a good mixer.
Mm-mm.
Did she ever go back to school? No, never went back to school.
No.
So you guys both decided you were going to go to college, and you both started in 1949 or 48.
Hey, 48. Fall of 48.
Now, what did junior high at college? How many students went there? Was that a small college then?
They had about 800 at that time, I
I
think.
believe.
Yeah.
Okay. And
It's a lot smaller than it is now.
what was your major was home ec,
Mm-hmm.
and what was your major?
Sociology.
Why did you pick sociology?
Well, that's what led to
But,
your
A
gotcha.
lot of ministers would take either sociology or Bible and philosophy, and I took the same courses for both of them, but I thought maybe the exams would be easier in sociology.
Why home ec? Why did you pick your major? Why home ec? Why not education or?
Well, I wanted to be a teacher, But I
So-
wanted to teach home ec. I guess because of Dad being in the bakery and I worked with that, and I enjoyed cooking and baking and everything, and I enjoyed it.
Okay. Did you live in a dorm
hmm
with, how many other girls were in your room?
Just 2 of us per room.
Would you go back to Cincinnati over the summer?
That first summer I did. And I worked in the Federal Bake Shop downtown Cincinnati. Had to ride the bus from where we lived downtown, but Dad got me a job right away. And the only thing I didn't like, there was a Catholic church that was near our house, block or so over, and they had bingo on Friday nights. And when I would go out to get the bus to go home, it was packed, people going out there for bingo. And after working all day, a lot of times I had to stand
Well, that was annoying.
in the bus.
Now, and you lived in the dorm?
The first year I lived downtown in a private home. And the first semester there were about 5 of us in this one house.
How far away from campus?
Oh, we were right at the edge of campus, about a block away. And, but the 4 other guys, they cut up so much and come in drunk and everything. And so I asked to be moved. And that's when they moved me over with Paul Hyde. Now, Paul Hyde knew better. Yeah.
We had the same band director. Schellsburg is a town up the road here. And we had the band director 2.5 days a week. He lived in Bedford, but he did our band 2.5 days a week and the Schellsburg band 2.5 days a week. If Hyman was having something special, he'd bring the Schellsburg kids down to play with us, or if they were having something.
This is in high school?
We'd go up
What
there.
did you play?
Clarinet, and so did Paul, so we knew each other, you know, from,
Band.
we both played first clarinet.
Did
And-
you play any instruments?
Tuba.
Really?
That makes sense.
The tuba has 2 notes, they're always the same notes.
But I had to quit.
horn.
I had to quit the
Sounds
band
so
because
forlorn.
they practiced in the afternoon and home ec had labs. I mean, I had my sewing, my cooking, and that kind of labs in the afternoon. My classes were in the morning, and I know 1 or 2 of the girls were in the choir, college choir their first year, and they had to quit because they just couldn't make the practices.
So Paul was your new roommate
Yeah.
on
He was
campus?
from down Schellsburg. No, we lived downtown.
Okay, so it was downtown.
Yeah.
And how in the world did Paul hook you by, is that how you met? Was
He
through Paul?
didn't.
No.
No.
Now
He-
here, let me tell how we met.
Okay.
Your version first.
One of my best friends,
You'd like
and,
my
and
version
my
better.
friends in college were Christian people. Some of them were brethren, and some of them weren't. But this girl was from Altoona, and we were best friends. And she was in the choir, and I wasn't. And Harold was in the choir. And she was engaged when she came to college. And at the end of the first semester, her father died, and she had to leave college. But she went on the choir trip. And she was talking to Harold, and she said, you know, my friend Betty Hire, I think you ought to ask her out. And she talked to him about me. Well, about,
That was in January.
that was the end of January, and about the end of March, she didn't come back then the next term. And she wrote me a letter, and she said, by the way, did Harold Bowser ever ask you out? I told him that I thought you'd be a good couple. And I thought, huh, so much for that. 2 months and no. But it made me curious. So,
Did you know who he was?
no. So real sneaky, I found out from the girls. I'd say, do you know Harold Belzer? Oh yeah, he's in this musical and he's in that musical, you know, and he's in the choir. And they told me all about him. So, and the one said, oh, I know his sister. She was my counselor at camp, and she took me up to the farm one time. And all this stuff made me, oh, his father's a deacon in the church, you know, and they tell me all this stuff, and it made me even more curious. And so we had chapel, and we had to sit alphabetically. And I figured out who he was because I happened to know the
She knew very well the boys that sat beside me. She knew their names and knew all about them. She didn't know me.
I figured out who he was. So being a waitress, you know, I was around. Boy, I'd look, see which table he was at and wish he would come and sit at my table. Maybe he would ask me out or something, but he never did. But
How much time had gone past now?
But about a month or so. And always, I mean, being a baseball team, town, whenever the baseball games were going on, I just loved to be there. But I had labs in the afternoon. And in the science building, I'd have biology and I'd have chemistry and come over past to our dorm. I'd come over and I'd think, I'm going to stick my head in the gate here and see how the game's going on before I went to my room to change into my clothes for the dining hall. And here he was taking tickets. And I was standing there at this entrance, you know, seeing what was going on in the game because I couldn't stay very long. And he was taking tickets. And he came over and started talking to me, and he asked me if I was going to that dance at they were having at the school that night. Well, nobody had asked me. No, I wasn't going. He said, would you like to go to the movies? So I accepted.
Are you going to the dance? No. Well, do you want to go to the movies?
I didn't know how to dance.
Was it a dance or was it a supper?
Uh,
Well, anyhow, it was something special. And
Wouldn't
he
want to
took
go
me
to that.
he took me to the movie that
What movie?
Laurel and Hardy, and he laughed. Wasn't Laurel?
Abbott
Abbott and Costello. And
Have you
I
seen their
never
movies?
heard anybody laugh like he did. It made me feel so much at
We'll
ease.
get to you in a minute. We're going to talk to her. So he laughed and laughed. And did you like that, or was it
Yeah.
embarrassing?
No, I thought he was funny.
Did he try to hold your hand?
I don't know. I don't remember.
I didn't kiss you.
No. But
Do you remember what you were wearing?
no.
Do you remember where you sat? So you just the thing that you remember was him laughing.
So then he'd ask me to different things, or maybe we'd just study in the library together. and
What did you like about him besides his laugh?
that he was going to be a minister.
Why?
He was a good guy. Treated you very nice.
What kind of dates did you go on?
Oh, mainly. Once in a while we'd go to a movie. We didn't have much money to do anything.
So this, when you met, was this your first year of college?
Second.
So
We
you
were
sophomores.
sophomores.
Was this the fall?
No, spring.
April
Spring.
28th.
It's just before school was out.
So your first date was in April?
April 28th.
Why do you remember April 28th?
We just do.
That's when your first date. Okay, let's hear your version.
Oh, she covered it pretty well.
Now, I remember you talking about how tall he was.
Yeah, I made my room, my roommate looked out over the walk where you went out from the college. And one night I said, I think I'm taller than him. You look out the window when we go and see. And she said, no, you're same height. But I didn't want to be taller than him.
Okay, so why did you decide, why did you wait so long to ask her out after the choir trip? Were you dating someone else?
No, I just was busy.
Did you,
Didn't really, I don't know, I don't think I dated anyone else
I don't
in
believe
college.
either.
did you date anyone in high school?
Not really. probably was group dates.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a group of us get on the pickup truck and we go to Ring Spring to a movie.
What did you do for fun
And,
growing up?
a lot of times, say a Sunday afternoon, a group of us would get together, and if it was raining or anything, we'd go to the barn, play hide and seek, or bag tag, or something like that. Now, bag tag, you got a burlap bag and tied it in knots, and you'd chase each other, and if I was it, I'd throw the bag and hit you. Then you'd have to get the bag and hit somebody, you know. So it just was constant running around.
So
the
I bet there was
barn.
people who were like, it didn't really touch me. It may have
Yeah.
touched my. I didn't feel it.
Or in the evenings, once in a while, we'd get together and pop popcorn and poo taffy, or play ping pong on the dining room table.
Do you have a ping pong table still?
Your dad had one.
I know
Yeah.
it was
Mhm.
bad. I want a ping pong table.
Yeah.
So you
And,
played ping pong games, went to the
Yeah.
movies sometimes.
and usually it was group activities like sledding or
I gotta get my pill, forgot.
things of that nature.
So when you finally asked Grammy out, what was it about her that you liked the most?
Oh, we just seemed compatible.
Was she pretty?
Both,
Yeah.
you know, it was important to both of us to have a Christian person, and the fact that we were both brethren was even more in your
The fact
favor.
that she's willing to go with me helped too.
Now you had hair back then, right?
Had what?
Hair?
Yeah.
Lots of it?
Yeah,
My sophomore year, I lost my hair and put
The
on
Met-
25 pounds.
when
So-
he met
You-
The
me.
year I met her. No, it was the year we became engaged.
How did you propose?
You know, I think one Sunday afternoon we were out hiking, weren't we, Betty?
Weren't we
Took
up
a
on the
drive
mountain?
Up in the mountain, up at the,
Harold had
the
a
beacon
car
light.
because he had a church, see,
we
and he had to drive to the church.
would hike back through the woods and things.
And how long after April 28th did you propose?
Was it the next year, Betty,
No, what?
that I proposed?
Yeah.
About a year.
And then so you were hiking and did you have the ring?
You gave me a ring my junior
Yeah.
year for
junior
Christmas.
What did you get down on one knee?
year. I don't remember. I think we were just kind of walking, and
What?
when
Harold, I don't remember.
I think we just were kind of walking and talking, and that's what came of it.
Did you discuss it or did you ask her?
I think we both were feeling the same way about it. And it wasn't.
And then
about-
he asked my parents.
Yeah.
Now this was kind of the thing. You had to wait a little bit to get married for
Yeah.
you.
Well, we were seniors then, and most of the kids that got engaged then got married right after. And my dad said no, I had to pay back what he paid for college first.
So how long did that take?
So
you?
I got my job, and I saved every penny that I possibly could, and I was able to pay it back in a year.
So he proposed your
We were
juniors.
engaged.
Hmm?
We were engaged, what, 2 years?
3.
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
3 years. How was that? Waiting 3
Well,
years.
from our junior year,
She got a ring on Christmas.
Senior year, Christmas. Year after. Yeah, well, it's 3 years.
Wasn't that hard?
Yeah.
What was the hardest part?
Well, then it worked out okay for us. We didn't really. First, we were disgusted, but the fact that he decided then to go on to seminary first, when we graduated and I got a job, he decided he wanted to go back to college and get music. So he went back the next year after we graduated.
Do you get
It
another
took all-
bachelor's?
Yeah.
I really didn't get the degree. I didn't get my piano competence.
Other than that, he
Oh,
could have.
really?
Yeah.
He could have. Harold said his fingers were too wide. He couldn't play the piano.
I never,
But
I never played piano never had any lessons till I was in college.
so
Yeah, we had the same thing. We have a
so he
keyboard proficiency
uh,
exam.
went back to school that year, and I taught. And then that summer, we got married, and he still went 2.5 days a week.
Where did you get married?
New Enterprise over at his home church.
What day?
June 28th.
What were your colors for your wedding?
I don't know if we paid much attention to that.
You've been waiting 3 years.
I had a tuxedo, didn't I?
Where'd you go on your honeymoon?
I worked for the Stone Line Company in the summertime.
Honeymoon. Where did you go on your honeymoon?
Honeymoon. Ocean Grove, no,
What?
our honeymoon. Ocean City.
Oh, we took a trip down through the south. We went down
We were down at the beach.
in Ocean City or
Yeah.
there, down.
For how
Took our
long?
time. We were going the best part of a week, weren't
Yeah.
we? And finally we just about the weather wasn't that great, and we decided to come back and
Go to work.
because we had our apartment and we wanted to get it set
Set
up
up.
and everything. And
So you went to the beach. So you took a vacation to the beach for your honeymoon?
yeah.
How was that? I mean, besides the weather.
Well, I'm not a beach person, but that's just what we decided to do.
We've
we
never
didn't-
been to Niagara Falls. A lot of people go up there. I've never been there.
We never went there.
You ever been to Canada?
I have. I
Well,
was up fishing.
Oh, trout season.
there's the American side and the Canadian side of the falls, but we never went.
You were up there with your parents, weren't you?
Mm-mm.
Where was your first home?
Salemville.
What, do you remember the street?
You mean our first?
Yours.
Saxton.
What was the street?
It was halfway between my school and the college. It was a town going up.
You were a kindergarten teacher?
No, home ec.
Home ec teacher. For what grades?
9 through 12.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I liked it.
How long did you do that?
Just 2 years. And then we went to seminary. And when we got to seminary, I thought I could get a job. Sears had their big warehouse.
Seminary in Chicago?
Chicago.
Why did you have
And
to go to Chicago?
I was going to
That's where the church seminary was. Bethany.
Bethany. Was it?
Is there any other church seminaries?
That's the only one.
They only had one. Kids came from all over
So you
California. There were kids from California and with us.
So what was it
Anyhow,
like
when
living
we
in
when
Chicago?
we got there, I
Uh,
didn't like Chicago, the big city. It wasn't fun, but
Dad was born there,
he
right?
got a job right away at Sears in the
the warehouse.
warehouse. You know, loading, shipping the boxes and everything. And he was so used to working hard on the farm that loading those boxes didn't bother him.
And then you...
And I was going to get a job in the, there were different aspects of the business there, because it was the big office building. It wasn't just, yes, they had a store there where you could shop, but it was the headquarters. And I was going to apply for a job there. And when I got to seminary, the president said, we have a principal out in the suburbs that will take any of the girls that want to teach. He will look at their certificates and tell them where he can fit them in. So I thought, well, yes, I'd rather teach. Then I'd have the summers off when he did. And they looked at my certificate right away. They said, oh, you can teach kindergarten. You've had early childhood education courses.
Now, that didn't really suit you. You wanted to teach
Oh,
all right?
I was just glad to get a job, and I loved it. And there were so many kids in the class. There were 2 teachers and one older lady who was just as sweet, and I learned so much from her, and it was really a good experience.
How long did you teach kindergarten?
Just a year,
And
then
then?
had Mark.
Sorry about
And that summer,
We appreciate it.
that summer, I got a letter from then he had to go to a summer pastorate. We came back east to a summer pastorate, and I got a letter from the president, and he said, we've only had babies sitting at the seminary, and we really would like it to be more a nursery school. And he wondered if I would
Start a nursery.
start a
This
nursery
is in
school.
Chicago?
There at the seminary. Because a lot of the seminary students had children, and their wives wanted to work and everything. So I started a nursery school. Had that for 2 years.
And then you had Aunt Cindy?
Well, she wasn't born till we graduated and were in Reading. And then I didn't do anything there. We lived there 3 years.
So Reading was your first pastor, real
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What was the church? Reading Church of the Brethren?
Yeah.
Yeah,
When
In
I,
the- in the city.
yeah.
And tell them what they told you.
Well, when I went there, they said they would like for me to go to Reading, and that I either had to relocate the church or close it. So
They said, and we asked for a small town situation. They said, Harold, you're more mature than most of the students, and we think you can handle this.
I got to Reading. They had the man who was there before me. He talked them into.
Okay, keep going.
He talked. They purchased ground to build a church, and we began looking into the location and everything. The ground that they bought, there was a street running right through the middle of it, and a railroad track right behind it. Stupid, but that's the ground they bought. Well, we began doing surveys, and I had the church do a survey on a certain Missing Hills community. Now, you worked with the Pennsylvania Council of Churches to get comity in an area. That means if you get comity, you can go in and build a church, and other churches are not going to come and build right beside you.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
and-
real
Compete for
Yeah.
churches.
yeah, and so that's what we did. We bought this.
We
Did
were
the
able to
survey of
sell
the Y
the-
missing area.
We were able to sell
sell
that one.
to a bowling alley.
They put their
It should've been
parking
good.
lot on one side of the street and their bowling alley on the other. They were tickled to get it.
We didn't lose any money on it, and of course the church, we bought 5 acres that was a sunflower field, and
Cool.
paid
I
I forget how much an acre, but I think total cost was about $20,000. The church didn't have much money, but then we built a church.
Did you help physically build it?
Well,
Or you hired contractors?
we hired contractors to come in and do it, and
This is in Reading.
It was a nice
yeah,
church.
very beautiful church.
How big
Um,
was it?
Oh, it was, I could see maybe 250, 300 in it.
And this is where Aunt Cindy was born?
No.
Yeah.
Aunt Beth?
Now,
And Beth was born in Reading.
no, Cindy was born in Reading.
I mean, Cindy was
Yeah.
born in Reading.
But we bought that and relocated out there. We sold the church in town to a black group. And the parsonage was right beside the church. And so when they'd have their services at night, they'd go late. We'd be up in the bedroom. We could look down and see what was going on from our bedroom and keep the lights off.
And we were right in the heart of the city. We
And-
had only one car,
What
which
kind of car?
Harold had to have all the time. And there I was with 2 children and never could.
And I talked to the district executive and to our church moderator, and I said, if we are to become a community church out there, it's necessary for the pastor to live in the community. And I said, but I do not feel that I can force the congregation into moving me out here. I think one of you need to do it, either the moderator or the district executive. The moderator said he would do it,
He
but
would do-
didn't do it.
do a thing.
And so I thought, well, there's one way to make it happen. I'll resign, and for them to get another pastor, they have to get a parsonage in the community. That's what I did, and that's what they did.
So you resigned and they got a parsonage.
They got a
No,
parsonage.
we moved to,
It took them about 2 years till they
got a
got a
pastor.
parsonage. But the church, Don Robinson, who was the brother of the president of the seminary, he followed me there. And he was there, I guess, until he retired. But the church built up, the community. I don't know if the church built up that much, but the community did, and the land became more valuable all the time. And a drugstore company wanted to build a drugstore in that area. So they approached the church and bought half of the 5 acres for about $4 million. And the church was able to use that to build another church in back in the second lot.
But that's when we came to Martinsburg.
Were you scared to resign? I mean, not have a job?
Oh, I waited till I had a job.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I had another job before I resigned.
Where was that?
Then Martinsburg.
Right outside of Martinsburg.
And that was a big congregation or small?
I have 2 churches there, Clover Creek and Deals Crossroads.
And is that where Aunt Beth was born?
Yeah.
Martinsburg. So
Yeah.
we're talking 1960.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we went there in
60 to
1960.
65. Yeah.
No, 60. Because Beth
From
was.
60 to 65.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Beth was born there in 62. And about 64, she was how old? 2 or 1? Anyhow, well, she'd been 1 in June, and that September, they were only paying us about $4,000 or $5,000 a year, and it was so hard to. We never went in debt, but we
Went with how?
had to scrape. And Harold said, Betty, I've got to ask for a raise. We just can't, with 3 children, we just can't make it. And he asked for a raise. And Lola's, his sister-in-law, her 2 sisters were on the board, and they vetoed it.
What? Say that again?
Yeah, they
Thought they
were,
couldn't afford to pay him
their father was a free minister in the church, and so they had clout, you know.
And he asked for $1,000 raise, and they felt they couldn't do it. They were the leaders, and
So what did you do?
So I
we
thought,
said,
well,
okay.
I'll go where
Called
I
the
get more money.
District executive and found out that Martinsburg was open, and that tickled
No,
us.
Union Bridge.
Oh, we were at Martinsburg, and he suggested 2 or 3 different churches, and we went there, and
The kids
we
would
didn't
cry.
like it.
One big congregation out by Johnstown, we went out there, and it was a snowy time of the year, about like now.
was
And
back
with all the
in,
coal mining and everything out there, and the snow was so dirty looking. We drove into the church and the snow was piled up and dirty, and the kids began crying, "We don't want to live here."
and it was out, the parsonage was out in an area that they didn't, and I didn't like it either. We said, we don't want there. And we came back and the district executive said, Harold, and that was about the third one he had sent us to. He said, I think I finally found something you'd be interested. He said, Union Bridge, Maryland is looking for a pastor, and I think that you would be interested in that.
That
And,
fit.
and then in a couple weeks, Dr. Kirchhoff and his wife came up to hear him. And it was so funny, Heather. We knew they were going to come and take us out to dinner. But we thought it was an older man. And they came kind of late, and I didn't even see that they were there. Well, Harold knew they were there because he left right after the service to go to the other church, where I didn't go. The children I took to Sunday school, and I taught a Sunday school class. I always stayed there, and they left when Harold did. So see, I never saw them, and Harold made arrangements where we would meet and everything for dinner. I didn't anymore get home till the phone rang, and this lady said, "Who were that strange couple at church this morning?" And I said, I didn't see anybody. Oh,
This lady was a town gossip. She had to know everything. She told everything.
and I was so glad. I was completely innocent. I thought they decided not to come because I didn't see them. And here comes Harold. Are you ready?
So you went to Union Bridge, and that was when, 1965?
Yeah,
How long did you stay in Union Bridge?
76.
11 years.
11 years. So that was one of the biggest congregations
Yeah.
you worked with. That's where our parents grew up.
Yeah. Well, I guess East Fairview would be.
East Fairview was bigger.
But you lived in Union Bridge? You liked it?
Yeah.
Did you do any daycare things or teaching? Or you
I-
just-
As soon as we got there that year, about the first of maybe spring of 66, they started saying, we're tired of, there's no kindergarten. Different churches had them, and they had to drive their children to other towns. And they said, well, Betty, you taught kindergarten in Chicago. Wouldn't you be interested in starting a kindergarten here at the church? And I said, well, Beth's only 4, and I wanted to stay home with her till she started to school. But I said, I'll help get it all set up and ready to go. Well, it came the 1st of October, and we still didn't have a teacher. And close to 1st of October, and one of the ladies in the church who married a GI, and she was from Germany, and she came to me and she said, Betty, I understand because Beth is 4, you want to wait a year. Well, she said, in Germany, we send them to kindergarten at 4 years of age. Why can't we open it to 4-year-olds? I have a 4-year-old. I'd be glad to send. And the church board said, well, that's fine with us. And we had as many 4-year-olds as 5-year-olds that signed up.
Have a teacher.
So I agreed to teach it. We opened the 1st of October, and I taught it till 1970, when I had, the summer of 1970, I had my cancer operation.
Talk about that. How did you find out you had cancer?
When I was 20, I found a light lump in my breast.
20.
20 in college.
Betty, after Mark was born, you had an infection. That's when the lump developed.
No, I felt it in college, but I didn't know any
Different.
thing, and I just didn't say anything to anybody.
Mhm.
And then finally,
So then
when I had
you
Mark, after that, even when I told the doctor when I had my first physical after I was married, I told the doctor when Mark was born, and I even had an infection, and they said it's probably just,
Hormones or
what'd they call it, milk gland or something. Anyhow, I told the doctor at Reading, and that was a big hospital where, you know, it was a good big hospital, and they said the same thing when Cindy,
so what happened what changed?
when Mark was born in Chicago, I told them, said the same thing, that's probably just a milk gland. In Reading, and then when
When
Beth
we were in
was,
seminary, the summer after Mark was born, she
Right.
couldn't nurse him, and she caught an infection and had to have it opened and drained and everything. And that's when it really began developing,
well,
giving you a lot of soreness.
but I felt it before that, Harold.
Right. So when did they finally do something about it?
So then, when we moved to Union Bridge in 65, my first physical with Dr. Kirchhoff, I told him, and he, you know, checked my breasts, and yes, there's a lump there. Oh, he said, I can't believe that they didn't do anything about that. But he said, I guess they knew what they were talking about if it's been that long. But he said, I intend to keep my eye on that. Well, in the spring of 1970, it was maybe May or something, I started the stomach stuff, and he gave me my physical and had me come back then and recheck me. And when I went back, I said, Dr. Kirchhoff, I found a lump in my other breast. And he said, okay, it's time to go to the surgeon. Well, the surgeon happened to be a Christian man, a good friend of his. And when he checked, he said, oh my goodness, we gotta do mammograms and
Do they
stuff.
know about cancer then?
Huh?
They knew what it
And they
was?
said, yes. If we gotta put you in the hospital and check that out. Probably it's cancer and we'll have to operate. So they took me to the hospital.
Did they have a total mastectomy?
And he wrote the order. The new one had come in the right. He figured because that one had been in the left all that time, it wasn't cancer. But he put possible mastectomy of the left and check out the right. Well, that day I went to the hospital. It was to be at 10 o'clock. And Harold got the kids off to school and was coming to the hospital. And here, the surgery ahead of me was canceled, and they took me in at 8 o'clock, and they couldn't get a hold of Harold. And when they came back with the biopsy, this one was cancerous. The new lump wasn't. And he didn't have any order to do a mastectomy. And he said, I stood there and thought, would Harold want me to wake her up and have her sign this paper? And he said, no, I don't think he would. So he went ahead and did the mastectomy.
While you were asleep.
Yeah.
So you woke up and it was the wrong one. Was that concerning?
Well, no. I mean, I knew Dr. Kirchhoff trusted him, and he was a Christian man, and it didn't bother us. But then when we moved up here, I got another one in this breast, and they did a check and removed the lump, but it wasn't cancerous. They just removed the lump.
How did that change things? Did
2 or 3 years ago, we went to Union Bridge to whenever Dr. Kirchhoff retired, and this doctor was there, and he came up to me and he said, I was just talking about you the other day, he said, telling your experience.
Now, did having a mastectomy, did that change things for you? Or was it no big deal? Or
Really, it didn't upset me. And
because a lot of women have
I was
big
called
deal.
I was called in the hospital that year they put the kindergarten in the schools. And I was called, they called the house to see if I would take the class. And, well, you know, you didn't know much about it back then, and I thought, oh dear, I'd never be able to go back and teach school in September, so I turned it down. And
Did it look funny? I mean, was it was just difficult, or do people just wear pads and that's
no, just
nobody cared?
just a surgery, you know,
Mhm.
and you got a prosthesis. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I got home, they said, Betty, the Carroll County Committee has approached our church. We need a daycare center here in Union Bridge. There's too many children that need daycare. And would you take care of it? So I got it started, and another teacher from Westminster, her husband had just died, and she took the morning till after lunch, and then I went in at 11 and took it to closing, and I taught that the rest of the time we were there.
Of these churches, what was the hardest part about being a minister that you found? Dealing with the members?
Oh, I don't know if I'd call it hard, but just having the people move ahead. I mean, when you're set in your ways, you don't want to get out of them.
Mm-hmm.
We've never done it that way before, you know. And I think trying to encourage people in a congregation to keep reaching out.
What,
It's
to
hard.
try charity or to try new things? What, to try new programs or a youth
New
program?
programs, just,
At Mannheim, it was needed
yeah,
to grow.
we needed to.
We needed more space.
We needed to build at Mannheim. We were using, do you remember being in the Mannheim Church, East Fairview?
You know,
They had an overflow area, and we had to open that all the time. And we really needed more space there. And so we did surveys and had Roy Johnson come in, and he helped us go through a whole process to help us realize that we do need more space. We need to build.
expand.
And which meant buying ground, going into debt. Well, we brought it up to the council to vote on it. One man,
The richest man.
well, the rich man didn't want to have a gymnasium, so he vetoed buying more ground, you know.
Because in the plans, that was one of the things that they would like space. They could use it for other things, but they wanted,
A gym.
Yeah.
and when the word gym was mentioned, he vetoed it. And he had all this money, and they listened.
But later on, that was after that, we were ready to go through it again, and that time we brought it up to council to vote on it. One man, Mike Martin, went to all of his relatives and encouraged them to come out and vote against rebuilding or adding more to the church. He said, we don't need it. And, you know, convinced all these people that don't go to church that they didn't need. And they came out and they voted it down.
So what did you do?
Well,
About
they
right
left
after
to
we
go.
left, the farmer came and said, the land is for sale. If you want it, you can have it. If you don't buy it, I'm selling it. This is your last chance. And by that time, this rich man was dead.
Mark was, there's one in every congregation, you know. But Friday was the time I usually spent working on the sermon, finalizing it. Every Friday he'd come in and want to debate something, you know. Well,
Take up his
in
time.
determining
Do you need to do homework? Okay, go ahead.
in determining that that we needed more space and everything, the man in charge had us even counting chairs, silverware, and all that. And we had one man do all the counting of the silverware. And one day Mike came in on his own, counted the silverware. And he said, that other man didn't count correctly. We can't go by that. I think he found 5 more spoons than what the other man did. But, you know, just little things like that.
He was an intelligent
Hmm.
guy, had brains, but
We would, I liked occasionally to use the a benediction, made the Lord mighty Lord, to the Edelweiss tune. And he would raise a stink about that because we didn't have the permission to use that copyright to sing it. And, you know.
Now let's talk a little bit about things that you guys loved.
I have to tell you that. I think you'd be interested in that sometime. So it doesn't have to be this round. There'll be other rounds.
Okay. Let's see. Apples.
okay, we moved to Gettysburg. It was only about a 5-year-old parsonage. Very beautiful, but very plain. There wasn't any decoration in them. And especially the kitchen and dining, or kitchenette, you know, we had a small table on the other side of the counter. And I needed to do some things. One day I was looking at a magazine and it had these apple dishes in it. And I said to Harold, we needed a new set of dishes. And I said, here we are in apple country. Why don't we get them? So we did.
This was what
Well,
year? 19 what?
76.
Okay.
And we said, we could put some apple,
Borders.
some apple border paper around, and just some little things like that. But you know, it just starts expanding. People, if they see, oh, she likes apples, so you get gifts, and it just kept going from there.
How many apples do you have?
Oh,
Remember you counted once.
Count 'em.
It's gotta be hundreds.
hmm?
It's gotta be hundreds.
Yeah.
Do you still like apples or it just,
Oh yeah.
what do you like about them?
Well, I love to eat them. I think they're pretty.
What is your favorite apple?
Oh, I always think when you think of apples, you think of Red
Red
Delicious.
Delicious.
So they're all red.
How do you feel about Fuji? You ever tried a Fuji
Mhm.
apple?
They're good.
Here's
I like
why.
them.
Me and Katie, it's our favorite. They last forever.
They're sweeter.
They always stay crispy. They'll last for 3 weeks in your fridge. And you can buy them year round. Fuji is my favorite. Red Delicious are beautiful, but Fuji are better.
I don't buy them because they're mainly an eating apple. And so I buy Yellow Delicious, and they're as good cooking as eating. Or what's the latest one that's very practically the same thing?
Well, the Fuji,
Is that
I think they have them and the Yellow Delicious
Yeah.
up at the market.
yeah?
We bought them a time or so
They
ago.
come
I
in
like 'em.
earlier.
What, this apple crisp you're eating here, what kind of apples do you use for that?
Yellow.
Yellow?
Mhm.
Yellow Delicious.
Mhm.
And I eat them too.
If you were like an apple, which apple would you be?
Well, if I want to eat it, I'd probably buy it
No.
raw.
I want you to make a comparison. If you, Betty, were like an apple, what apple would you be?
I never thought of that.
Well, I'm asking you to think about it now.
You ought to be a Fuji. Sweet, tender.
Will last a long time in the refrigerator.
Yeah. Get them earlier than some of the others because we buy them fresh from the orchards. We never buy
On the other hand, there's a crab apple.
but
Bitter.
over the years, you know, people just start giving you apple things. Just look, most of this stuff was all given to me. The kids either made it or Mark made that calendar thing.
The first word I ever learned how to spell was apple because I was in your kitchen.
Is that right?
Uh huh.
But, you know, just people or make things. That apple, little wooden thing over there is an apple. It's just all kinds of.
So, Pappy, what is it about fishing and hunting that you like so much?
Oh, just being out in the woods, relaxing, sitting up in a tree stand for hours.
Why is that interesting?
Not hearing a telephone, just looking at the birds, watching the birds, seeing robins in November, and just being out
What
in
do you
nature.
What do you think about when you're out there on the tree stand?
Oh, I have a little testament I read. There have been four or five times at least when I've been reading one of the pastoral epistles and look up and see a buck.
And so you shoot it?
That's happened to me 3 times I can remember.
Would it be fair to say that God brought you that buck?
Well, he didn't take it away.
Another thing, our low salaries. Hey, we probably wouldn't have been eating much meat if we wouldn't have had the deer. We ate deer meat all our life.
And I grew up with hunting, the farm.
Do you remember how old you were when you got your first deer? 8 or 9?
No, it was after I was out of the seminary,
Really?
when I was at Reading.
Did you go hunting before then? You just never got
Yeah,
one?
just never got one.
Do you get one about every time now?
Well,
2 or 3.
I've killed 50-some.
Your whole life?
Yeah. There have been a couple of years I didn't get any. And a couple other years I'd get 2 or 3.
Was the first one hard?
First one, I was up on top of the mountain at Salemville. I got up there and I heard a deer came out through. I saw this buck. I shot. The deer kept running. I shot again. I didn't know I hit it. So I went down to try to see where the deer were running and it was laying down there.
Were you sad?
And I think all over the mountain they heard me yelling. You know? And the next year, went up in the mountain, same tree stand, no, same stump really it was leaning against. About 7 o'clock, saw a buck come out through right down below me, shot, it went way up in the air and down, got it. So I thought, oh boy, this is a breeze, I'll come up here the first day every year. Well, it didn't happen that way every year. I think the biggest thrill, though, wasn't when I got my first deer. It was when I was with Mark and he got his first one.
Why?
Well, I shot mine. I was just sitting there, cleaning it out and everything. And I heard him shoot and yelled, "Dad!" And I went over and we drug our deer down together.
No.
His
No.
first deer.
So you were about as proud as you could ever be in your life?
Yeah. It's him getting his deer.
And you go hunting every year now?
Oh,
Still?
yeah.
What about fishing? What do you like about fishing?
Well, usually I'm able to go out on the first day.
Katie, you'll never live that down. Happy, you'll throw
I
that
don't feel
up.
bad about it.
Well, it's not like you're like out in nature. You're on the side of the road.
Yeah, just don't feel bad about it. One person feeling bad about it's enough.
Oh, I don't feel bad about it at all.
Oh, there again, it's relaxing. Have you ever sat along a stream and just listened to the water?
The water means mosquitoes, so no.
Not in April. Maybe a snake once in a while.
Heather.
But I just being out there and catching my own, seeing other people catch theirs, just relaxing.
In college, we had our comprehensive exams, and that was really taxing. And when we were finished that day, he said,
Do you know what a comprehensive exam is? You have about 3 hours of written examinations on everything you've had in college. And you also have an hour with 3 professors questioning you about college, about the courses you've been taking and so forth. You have to pass them to graduate. So they're intensive. And when you come out of them, you're ready to
go fishing.
do anything.
Go fishing.
Yeah, some
So
people
he-
go to the taverns and some go fishing.
So we went up to the river. He was getting his things out of the car. Took me along. I walked down to the stream. My foot slipped and my foot went in, got my feet and leg wet. Very disgustingly, he started putting the stuff back in the car because I was wet, you know, and everything. It was a beautiful sunshiny day, and I said, indeed, we're not leaving. I can sit right here and watch you and dry off. And I wouldn't let him go. So he fished, and I sat there. And
Have you ever been drunk? Never?
I know what it
never-
feels like to be drunk.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, from hot chocolate or
Oh, he
grape
gets
juice.
sick off of it.
Grape juice. I had
Grape
a
juice
date.
that's been sitting around for a
For a
while.
The English
There's a
Seventh
word
Day.
for that.
There's an English Seventh Day Church down the road, about a half mile from my home, and the minister there had a girl about my age. I guess we were the same age. Well, you didn't know her. And I took her to a movie one night, and we came back and went in, and the minister and his family, they were all sitting around the table like we are, and eating cheese and crackers and drinking grape juice. And so I joined them, and I drank a glass of grape juice, just sipped it down, and I began getting sick. Finally, I had to excuse myself, and I got halfway out through the yard, big tree there. I made it to the tree, and I just held on to the tree till I finally got rid of everything, and I went home. I never did ask her that. She was a nice girl.
So grape juice makes you sick.
Yeah.
And
Hot chocolate, the same thing.
How does that work
I
with all
saw
the
him.
communion you have
We
to
went to. We came home from college one weekend, and
We went to a
Replogle
football
and
game.
Ring Spring were playing, and that was a big rivalry. And he wanted to go to the game, and we went. And coming out, it was a cold night, and he wanted a cup of coffee, and I wanted hot chocolate. And they were out of coffee; they only had hot chocolate, so he got one too. We drove down to the farm, and he got out of the car, and he threw up everything.
Well, we had to stop once on the way home,
Yeah, I believe.
and I had to hold on to the car door till I got rid of some of it and felt good enough to get back in the car. We got home, I couldn't stand up. I just,
Hot chocolate and grape juice.
Grape The little bit that he drinks for communion is all that he can handle.
Do you get a cup with just a little bit in it?
yeah.
Weird. Are you allergic to anything weird?
Me. She's been doctoring for me for.
Have you ever been arrested? Have you ever done
Yeah.
anything?
You
Oh, I got caught once for driving recklessly down in Maryland. He was taking you back to Jamontville, and I had my arms around you. The policeman pulled me over and
kind of around the back seat, you know.
arrested me for reckless driving.
Arrested
I-
you, or just gave you a ticket?
He gave me a ticket, and I had to pay a fine.
Were you driving all over the road?
No.
I
He
was,
was-
I was a
he
young
was-
guy with an out-of-state license, and just the
Absolutely.
policeman had so many tickets he had to give out, and I came along.
What, have you ever done anything illegal?
Hasn't everybody?
Speeding?
Speeding. And in Chicago,
Oh, we
I
got one.
overparked at a parking meter.
Oh.
I had to go to the dentist, and I put my money in the meter, went in, waited and waited, had to get a tooth out, one of my wisdom teeth. I came out, my mouth full of cotton, bleeding, and the policeman was there putting a ticket on my car. And I said, "You giving me a ticket?" He said, "Well, you ran out of money." And I said, "For Pete's sake, you didn't want me to get out of the dentist chair and come out and put a nickel in that, did you?" And he walked away and didn't give it to him.
Hey, but we got one in seminary. A new shopping center opened, and we needed something on a Saturday night, and we went down to it, and it was snowing. And when we came out the in lane, and
There was no
as we
markings.
come out
It was
on the
new.
street,
I think it was marked on the pavement.
It was on the
under
pavement.
snow.
and it was covered with snow, and it just opened. We didn't know, and so they gave him a ticket, and they scolded him, and they said, "And you have Pennsylvania license on?" And Harold said, "Yes, indeed. There's a notice on our bulletin board at the seminary that we keep our home state license." He wanted to argue about that, but he finally let that go. And Harold was going to protest this, and don't you know, his comprehensive exams to graduate were the same time
Seminary.
the hearing was to be, and he couldn't go. So
Paid
it was
the
only
fine.
$15, and we paid it.
What, talking about each of the kids, what were some of the things that you learned about yourselves from raising children?
Oh, I think I learned to have more patience.
Who drove you crazy? Mark?
All five of us.
All five of us.
Different ways.
Yeah.
Cindy was so backward and shy. She was. You wouldn't believe it, but she was. And at times you just thought, "Oh, Cindy, you." You
Beth
know.
would not eat.
And Beth didn't eat.
Then there's Mark.
What did he
No, Mark. He really didn't give us trouble.
I thought there were a couple things that happened at school.
Oh yeah, well.
do? He fight people?
Oh.
No, we never got in fights.
What would he do?
Oh, in college, he didn't pass his French till his senior year, and he had to go back in the summer and take his French over. You know.
What was it like when your first two grandchildren were born?
I can
First
remember
three,
this
really.
morning that Cindy called and said she had twin boys, and I was home alone, and I had to tell somebody. I was so excited.
Who did you tell?
And I called Jean Simpson, and ever since that, she said to me, Oh, how proud she was that I thought of calling her first to tell her my good news. She
Where were you?
out calling, making calls and stuff. I was home alone when the call came from Cindy.
Did you come down right after then, or did you wait?
I think we came down
And-
soon afterward.
And you knew the story about Ben. We were in Mannheim.
Fairview.
And Mark had taken Chris to the hospital and everything, and he thought, now they'll want to come down, and how am I going to get a hold of them? They'll go out to eat or something after church. So he knew when church was Sunday school was over, so he called the church office and said to get me, and I was going up to the sanctuary and took the call.
My mom said she was.
Found out that she was in the hospital, and I got word up to Harold at the front of the church. So he gets up in the sermon and he says, now we will be leaving for Virginia after the service. Our first, our
Want to go down and welcome
grandson.
our first grandson.
No, not your first one, but
Our grandson, yeah.
grandson was born this morning. And he didn't know it was going to be a boy. But it was.
My mother said that she was always so disappointed because 2 weeks before I rolled around, Cindy had the first 2 grandkids, and they were twins.
Yeah.
So that was so exciting. And so by the time I rolled around 2 weeks later, I was old news. It was, oh.
Not to us, you weren't.
She's
At
like,
least you were a girl.
yeah, there was something new, but it wasn't twins, and she wasn't the first, and she wasn't anything new.
I wanted a girl, and after 2 boys, I didn't want another boy.
Thanks, so I'm glad I didn't disappoint. So what was it like being a grandpa and a grandma?
Great.
Fun.
What's the best part?
We
Just
were
like
so,
now.
so excited.
Because you can spoil them rotten and send them home when you're done.
And you can have them in to talk and help plan things.
I
Know they're
sewed-
there when I have
I
to
made-
move and need somebody to carry a crate. Somebody
I
to give a
sewed-
dish to.
Do you remember the year I made you girls all a dress for Easter alike?
Was it the brown one?
It was the white ones, I think.
And I think your other grandmother embroidered on them, didn't she? I think
know.
so.
We
And your
hated
mother made a
dresses.
tie for Ben and Mark out of the material.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, that one.
Yeah, I didn't mind dresses.
I didn't like them. I wanted to be a boy with Jake and Luke.
Well,
These
I
are my best
wanted,
friends.
I wanted a girl when your daddy was born.
In a
and
way, you were your dad's boy for a while.
Yeah, I still am.
Well, I wanted a girl and he wanted a boy. But when the doctor came and told me that it was a boy, I was so tickled because I could just see how proud Harold, a couple babies had already been born in the seminary, and they were girls. And Harold got to go over to across the street, the hospital was across the street, and tell him that he had a boy. So I was real happy about that. But I wouldn't have been so happy if Cindy would have been a boy.
Yeah.
By that time, I wanted a girl, whether or no, and so I was tickled
Well,
to
that's
get a
good.
girl. Then when Beth was born, we didn't talk boy or girl. We just said we want a baby.
And a healthy baby.
Did you only want 3?
Doctor told me no more.
Did you have a hysterectomy?
No, not then. But he said, trouble I had. Beth came a whole month early, and he just thought it was best I didn't have any more.
So of all the years that you had, how many congregations did you have over the years?
From the time he graduated from seminary, or the ones?
Part-time and summer pastors and everything. I have a poster in the office with pictures of all the churches on it.
So 20?
Oh, no, no.
10?
Let's see, 2 summer pastorates, 2 in college, and then Reading,
Clover Creek
Clover
Crossroads.
Creek Crossroads, Union Bridge, Gettysburg, Mannheim, that's 10.
And
Um,
Moscow and Elk Run down there.
2 down there,
Then Holsinger,
Holsinger and
Mine's
Crossroads.
Crossroads,
Again.
Holdsburg,
These are part-time here.
Holdsburg,
Part-time.
and
Stringers
Saxon.
Town.
That was 16.
Well,
Of course, some
you
of
get
them,
around.
some of them have been 2 at one time,
Right.
and some of them are just
Did you have a
part-time.
favorite congregation?
Really, for the most part, we liked them all.
Well,
But
we
I think
always,
Fairview,
yeah, but
Gettysburg,
in some
Manhattan,
ways, we
and,
always
Union
liked
Bridge.
Union Bridge because we thought it was wonderful for the kids. We liked it. We had very best friends. We did things together. We went on. We had at holidays. We were never alone because Harold were gone and mine were in Florida, and so we had really no family down around there, and we just had really good friends our age, the Kirkos and the Foutses
Old Vaders,
and
just a lot of.
another
The
two,
last 4.
about 5, and then we had a real good pastors group. We had about 4 or 5 pastors that we did things to. We went camping together, and we'd get down to the
Is that what you did for fun? Camping?
Mhm.
As a family?
Yeah.
What else did you do for fun?
hmm?
What did you do for fun? Vacations and
A lot of camping.
where?
Up at Camp David, where the president
Around Thurmont.
up
Up
there
in
above
Gettysburg, some of the campgrounds up there.
up there.
What kind of did you go tent?
No,
We had a
trailer.
trailer.
Did
From
the
19
kids,
63 on, we had a trailer.
what did the kids sleep inside? Everybody slept
Mhm.
Oh
inside?
yeah, we had.
Was it a big trailer?
No,
Well, I don't know.
it was.
We had a
uh,
kitchen and
The first one was a 15-foot trailer,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a bunk up above the where we would eat, and where we would eat, we could lower that and make that flat. Had a bunk there, then one at the back end. So
so we
always
had
slept
enough
that way.
room for everybody to sleep, and refrigerator and stove, and,
Camping, so hunting and fishing and stuff. What else did you do besides
and
camping?
several of our minister friends at that time. That was a big thing to have a camper.
Did you play games as a family?
When we would camp, yeah. Mm-hmm.
What kind of did you play games and
Oh.
sing or?
We play Racco and just table games like that.
And swimming and hiking.
Now, dogs. You always had dogs. Why did you
Yeah.
always have dogs?
Had to have a hunting dog,
What was your favorite dog?
Cats.
Jack.
Jack.
Mm-hmm. Had a couple of Jacks.
Beth always had cats.
One Jack I had, we had it when we were in Maryland. In fact, we had it at Clover Creek. One of the members out there had beagles, and I bought it from him. And I'd taken out training the first summer I had it. It wouldn't chase anything. I went back to Mr. Long a couple of weeks before season. I said, this dog doesn't want to chase anything. And he said, take it out the first day or so of hunting season, and if it doesn't work for you, I'll give you another one. So I took it out the first day, and the first rabbit I shot at, that dog knew exactly what to do. It would chase the rabbit around, bring it right back to me, and if I'd shoot a rabbit, I'd never trained it to do it, but it would get the rabbit and bring it back to me. And down in Maryland, I'd go out with Mr. Jones. He was an older man. He and a friend of his who was at the hospital, 3 or 4 of us would hunt together. If any of us would shoot a rabbit, that dog would get the rabbit and bring it to me. So it knew which side of the bread it was buttered on. And the weekend that my dad died, I asked Mr. Jones to take care of the dog while I was up here. He went out, took care of it. One time he didn't close the gate quite right. The dog got out and was killed.
And we went
Aw.
back. The dog was killed.
What a horrible week to have your dog die. How did your parents die?
The year Cindy went to youth conference, we were taking her to the plane, and the dog had gotten out.
That was another Jack.
And we knew it was killed. We saw it, but we didn't say a word to Cindy because we knew she would be miserable on her trip.
That was a Jack she didn't like.
What if you had people know, you know, your people, your family, or your eventual family, or whatever, know something about your life? What would you have them know?
I guess that I was a minister.
Why would that be the thing that you would tell them?
Well, I would hope that they would feel that was worthwhile, a worthwhile way for me to spend my life.
What about you?
Well, and whenever he said it was time to move, I supported him and got ready to move, and I never made a fuss about moving or the new.
We usually made the decision
Yeah.
together.
Talk it over, and when we made the decision, that was
She has a little plaque hanging in the bathroom of all places. It says, "Whither thou goest, I will go."
Yeah, I saw that. It's above the toilet.
yeah. That
Quote
is,
from Ruth.
who gave us
I'm sorry it took me so long to
Harold? Where did we get that?
Cindy made it.
Oh,
I really think it ought to be in a different room.
It took me like 20 minutes to get it. That's the worst part.
Not the best place.
What about you? If you had your, you know, posterity or ancestors or something know something about you, what would you have them know?
She was a good wife and a loving mother.
No, this is up to her.
well, I
This is not her.
enjoyed being a pastor's wife and the life, the church, and we always, one of our first decisions was, is the family going to be happy here, especially the children. We always took that into consideration. We turned churches down that we said, no, we wouldn't like it there.
What's the most important thing you've ever done in your whole life?
Taught school.
Ask me.
No, but I mean, satisfying career-wise.
What about in your whole life, including everything you've ever done for anybody? What's the most important thing you've ever done?
Made him behave.
Did it work?
Most of the time.
Okay, that's good. What about you? What's the most important thing you've ever done?
Well, of course, marrying her.
Aww.
Oh.
Anything else?
Yeah.
Going into ministry.
Yeah.
I had a serious boyfriend in high school.
He was
When
pretty
I-
important.
When I went to
Serious.
college,
No, it wasn't serious.
you know, and then it dissolved. And I only found out a few years ago that my dad threatened him, the reason he quit me.
Really?
Now that's the kind of dad I had.
Oh.
He had my cousin, who was my best friend, and my age, went all through school together, go to him and threaten him.
Gosh.
And he never told me until about 2 years ago at a
Reunion.
reunion.
What's the funniest thing that you've ever done?
And to add to that, his sister I knew first and was my best friend. And she was always welcome at my home. She lived outside of town, and her dad worked in Johnstown and was only home on the weekends, so they had no transportation other than the school bus back and forth. Well, she was in the band, and if we had something there, she would stay all night with me. Now, he was in the band too, and he would hitchhike home, but they didn't want her home. But that was my dad.
What's the funniest thing that's ever either happened to you or you've done in your life?
What seems funny to me doesn't, maybe not funny to some other people. Other people would have to answer that for me.
So what do you think is funny?
Oh, I don't know if I'd call it funny, just enjoying life.
The auto harp?
That's part of it, you know.
And puppet shows?
When he was in college, he was in Maryland, and he played the part of Zeke the drunk. And I know he enjoyed the part. It was a big thing, but he had a church in college. And how far away was the church?
About 25 miles.
And he didn't want them to find out that he was playing
The
the part of Zeke Bramble the drunk.
Did you have fun playing that part?
Oh, yeah.
Why was it fun?
Oh,
He did funny, crazy stuff.
Did you ever play pranks on the kids?
you mean my kids? Oh, yeah, yeah. Like Beth, April Fool's Day. Just foolish jokes on them.
Like what?
Well,
Beth,
when we were
He
at,
put Beth's car in the garage sideways. She come down to get it to go, and she had to get that car out of the garage.
How did you get the car in there sideways?
it took a lot of going back.
And another thing he did, this one family
Get in the car, there it was sideways in the ground.
had 2 boys and a girl around her age, and if we went away, we didn't feel comfortable letting Beth alone at the parsonage, even in high school, because the girl had a reputation, the pastor's daughter, ahead of us, and so she would stay with them. And this one time we went to conference and she stayed with them. I guess it was
Over April.
conference. And Harold sewed.
No, I did not.
No. You
Beth
tell.
stayed with them, with this family. And when she was ready to go to bed, her pajamas were sewn shut.
The legs.
And Beth said, "That dad, I'm going to get even with him." And Barbara, who's
She just
staying with,
about
she
died,
laughed.
knowing that she did it. She thought it was funny.
So the next night I went to bed and my pajamas were sewn shut.
And Harold, he didn't know anything about this. He said, "What in the world? Who did that?" And Beth said, I guess she finally owned up that she did it in retaliation of what he did to her. And he said, "What do you mean? I didn't hear she." We finally made her realize, and she said, "That Barbara, she pulled that trick on me. She's the one that sewed them
So
shut."
do you
and left
guys
me
always still do
think
April
that it
Fool's
was my
things?
dad.
Yeah.
Like what other things have you
So
done?
she died here in the last year. And
Barbara, not Beth.
and Beth sang at her funeral, and they had different people. They asked anybody that wanted to get up, and some people were telling, you know, Barb was everybody loved her and everything, and Beth got
Told that
up
story.
and told that story, and all the people just loved it.
So what other tricks have you guys pulled on each other over the years?
Oh, I think I usually give a phone call or something to the kids on April Fool's Day. Or,
Yes.
Saying what?
yeah.
Yeah, he enjoyed April Fool's Day.
Put cards sideways.
Always
Best.
pulling jokes.
We'll ask her about it, see if she remembers.
What other jokes did you pull on the kids? Or anybody?
Well, I think all three of them, we occasionally write emails to each other with crazy stuff on, write poetry or something
Uh-huh.
like Ash Wednesday. Well, Matthew's poor little gerbil died. I wrote him a nice little poem about. Do you remember in the musical Oklahoma, poor Jeb is dead?
Right.
Yeah. Well,
Well, he
to that melody, I wrote a little limerick about Matthew's gerbil. I think I still have it in there on the computer. I thought it was a pretty good one.
Yeah, it was
Aw.
cute.
Starts out about how they're going to take care of it and put it out in the snow. Put it on ice, but the ice melted and so forth. You'll have to read it. I'll pull it up after a while and let you read it.
What it is about music that you like so much?
The whole family was kind of musical. They had a band at Salemville band. Dad played the trumpet in it, and Mary a trombone, and Junior cornet, and we always did a lot of singing at home. And I just
They
grew
played
up
the
with music.
piano.
What about you? Did you guys have music?
No.
But you were in the band anyway.
Yeah, I was in the band, but I didn't, wasn't in choirs or anything.
We had, in high school, we had a very good music program. And we had what they called forensic contests, statewide. Started out district, regional, and ended up being state. And our high school octet, I was in it, we went to state finals with it. And I knew the final was at York, at Oil City. And the one other octet was from Oil City, and the one judge was from Oil City, and we came in second. Oil City came in first, and everybody knew we were gypped, you know, that we should have been first, and we were good. In college, I was in the varsity quartet, and there was a very wealthy lady in Huntington wanted to sponsor us to put us on the Ted Mack Amateur Hour. Now that was a TV amateur program that they'd have singers come in and they'd keep moving on. Eddie Fisher, I think, was on it at one time. Julius LaRosa, you wouldn't know him. A quartet called the Mariners. And a lot of name
And you went on there?
groups at that time were on it, and this lady wanted to sponsor us, and we would have done all right on it, but we began thinking we all knew what we wanted to do in life, and if we did that, it would interrupt what we wanted to do.
So they refused to go.
Who knows, I might have been a wealthy, famous guy, but
They were good.
Maybe an alcoholic too.
Hot chocolate and grape juice.
So, do you have any advice? What about making decisions? Advice about making decisions?
Follow your heart. Your heart.
We talk it through.
Yeah.
I remember the
Think
one
it through.
church that we looked at over by Windber. We all, the children,
Pray
Right.
about it.
happy there. That time to Tyrone, when we went to investigate that, we said no.
What about having children? What advice do you have about children?
We were
Don't have more than you can afford. And with the
No, we-
findings that they are coming out with now regarding children with difficulties, it's better to have them before you are 40.
Okay. But what about raising them? What advice?
Be able to discipline them.
You spank them or no?
Yeah.
sure they got spankings.
Mhm.
What's the best to
And-
smack a kid with?
And if I said, okay, go to your room, they went to the room. There was no. One lady came to me at Gettysburg and she was talking about her little girl. They were a little older and they had adopted these two children and she couldn't manage. She said, well, if I tell Lisa to go to her room, I have to stand and hold the door shut to keep her in there. She said, what do you do? And I said, well, when I say go to your room, she knows to go there and stay.
That little girl was a very headstrong girl, and the mother didn't know how to raise children. She was an adopted girl, and the mother.
Well, mostly when I've seen, it's been the parents' fault.
I had a wooden paddle, I guess about that long, that I shaved down. It wasn't real thick or anything, but it would sting. And I don't know that I've ever had to use it much, but the kids knew I had it.
What about when they were older, when they were teenagers and they were older? What advice do you have for parents of teenagers and older children?
If you can't talk to them beforehand, you certainly won't talk to them when they're teenagers. If they won't listen to you at an early age, they won't listen when they're teenagers.
What's the best part about having children?
Having grandchildren.
Yeah, the return policy.
Oh, it was the loneliest time of our life when they left.
Some of her cousins, two of her cousins, have no children. And
They were
the one, she and her husband, they had a dog. That dog died 2 years ago. He grieves that dog more than what we grieved Ben.
Wow. Because that's all they had.
Yeah.
she gets.
He still is grieving that dog.
No,
It's been dead
she
2
wasn't
years.
growing up. She wasn't a eccentric person or anything,
She is now.
but she is now. You know,
What advice do you have for getting older after the kids leave the house? How do you maintain a strong and healthy marriage when you're now focused
you
on
have to
yourself?
have, like we had friends that we did
Yeah.
things with.
Except here.
Here, this
The
is the loneliest
four churches I had up here,
Weren't
part-time churches.
in this
We
town.
were not living in the town, and you just don't have
Now,
the close
the other
relationship.
churches, like even down at Burkittsville in Virginia, we had good friends. to do things with
At
and invited
Hollidaysburg,
us.
we spent more time in there. We spent more time at Hollidaysburg, and so we
Yeah,
have friends there.
he was up there, and
So having good friends, but how do you maintain a good, strong, healthy relationship over how long have you been married?
56 years
56.
this summer.
So do you get bored of somebody after 56 years?
No, you feel comfortable.
What do you talk about after 56 years of talking?
Being lonely.
What did he say?
Being lonely. I asked what you talk about, and he said being lonely.
Our grandchildren.
Yeah.
But what do you do to make each other happy and to stay happy after a half century?
She crochets,
We do
and I work
crafts.
on my tapestry. We sit there and work on tapestries and crochet for maybe 2 hours and watch Wheel of Fortune and so forth, and not say a word to each other, but we're together anyhow. After about an hour and a half, she will say, "You don't talk to me."
Well,
Right.
what haven't you said after 56 years?
He has to count his little.
Stitches.
I have to show you what I'm doing.
He has to count, and I don't. So I can talk and do mine, and he can't.
I have to get this done by, well, I'll have it done by the end
Yeah.
of March. But I want to have it all mounted and everything so I can get first prize at the bid for
Your
charity.
Afghan, your heart Afghan is purple, isn't it?
Yeah.
Did I make you one? What?
Two.
You
I have
have
a cream one. I have two cream ones. Yeah, I have two.
Does
I
Sarah
couldn't
get one?
remember what color.
I might have stolen Sarah's. Maybe you made Sarah one and then I took it. I don't know. Well, finishing up here, we talked about, you and your family and where you came from and where you're going and some advice that you have for future. I mean, what advice do you have for people who are married for a long time as to how to continue?
Stick with it.
You have to be best friends.
Are you best friends?
I think
He's
so.
my best friend. You can talk about anything, or
What's your favorite part of him and what's your favorite part of her?
his funny humor.
Does he ever
Yeah.
make you crazy though?
But everything I read says the most important thing in life is to be able to laugh and have humor
Do you
in
laugh?
your home, and he always.
Your
can
family
always-
is not a laughing family.
No.
Huh?
Your family.
No.
They're not
He
laughing.
brought that into my life because
What-
my family wasn't,
Funny. Happy.
everything was so serious and
I
proper.
did not know that her dad said she had to pay all the debts back before she got married.
When he
I didn't know that until a couple
He
years
asked-
ago.
he
Had I
had
known that, I think we would have eloped right then and there.
So you didn't know that's why she was putting it off?
Oh,
You didn't tell him?
no. I would have remembered had you told me. You didn't tell me.
So what excuse did you give him? What did you think?
well, he wanted to go back to school, and it really worked out.
Yeah.
So, but what do you love most about her?
I fed him good.
No.
Everything.
Like what?
Just being herself. Being who she is.
Well, who is she?
My wife. Being a wife. A good one.
But what did she bring into your life?
Happiness.
How?
Oh. I guess through companionship.
Okay, so she,
Enjoyed a lot of the same things.
baseball, church.
Football,
Church.
church, most of all.
family.
Family was important to both of us. I never had to fuss, well, I want to go see my family. He was willing to go, and I was more than willing to go to see his family. His mother was more a mother to me than mine.
But she was able to put you into one word to say, this is my favorite part of him. My favorite part of him is his humor. That's what he brings into my life. What does she bring into your life?
I think she has helped my faith. I know she has.
I could say the
Support.
same about you.
Support. And it's helped in decision making.
That's your favorite. That's the best thing.
I don't know if I can pick out one thing and say it's the best. So many things.
Anything that you think anybody else ought to know about you guys and your life as we finish up here?
Sometime I have to tell you about how my dad got started in the turkey business, but we don't have time on this one.
Yeah, we'll have to save that one for another one.
Yeah.
But anything else people should know?
Nothing they should know.
Well, say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Fairly well.